Amit Bhatti will be presenting breaking the IEEE encryption standard, XCB AES, in 2 queries. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. So this work is about, as Peter said, about XCB AES and IEEE standard, and our attack showing how to break it in 2 queries. XCB AES is a tweakable enciphering mode. So I'll start by describing what a tweakable enciphering mode is. A tweakable enciphering mode is a length-preserving encryption. So basically, it can be seen as a generalization of tweakable block cipher. So a tweakable block cipher with variable length tweaks and variable length inputs. It has many applications, which is why it is also a point of interest, currently getting more traction in the NIST accordion initiative. And some of the key applications are for full disk encryption and as a component in robust authenticated encryption. So what it means for a tweakable enciphering mode, or TEM, to be secure? Well, a secure TEM should be indistinguishable from a random permutation under chosen ciphertext attacks. So basically, for every tweak and every input length, a TEM can be modeled as a random and independent permutation. And it is a strictly stronger notion than the PRP notion of block cipher, because here the adversary has both forward and backward, basically enciphering and deciphering oracle access to the primitive, and the adversary should still be unable to distinguish it from a random permutation. XCB AES is a TEM that was standardized by IEEE in 2010 and later was kept part of the standard revision in 2021. It's a TEM based on hash counter hash design strategy. I'll describe this by a small block diagram, a simple block diagram. So let's say this is the enciphering algorithm for XCB AES that takes a tweak and a message. A tweak can include header or associate data, nonce, any other kind of inputs, and the message, and you want to have a ciphertext that is length preserving on the message, and you're using XCB AES. Then XCB AES internally breaks the message into 2 parts. The right part of fixed length and bits, which would be, let's say in this case, for AES 128 bits, and then the left part with the remaining bits of the message. Then it processes both these parts internally with the hash counter hash style, where you use 2 polynomial hashes and a counter mode. So the variable length input ML is processed through a polynomial hash functions to compute something that is fixed length, combined with the remaining fixed part with a block cipher to generate the IV for the counter mode, and then the counter mode is used to generate a key stream to encrypt the message. These hash functions H here is a polynomial hash. I'll give a very simple description of what it means for a hash to be a polynomial hash. So a polynomial hash can be simply described like this. It takes a key and an input, and while evaluating, it breaks the input into small chunks of small blocks of length same as the key, and then evaluates a polynomial on the key with these chunks as the coefficient of the polynomial. Let's keep this reference in mind, because this is what we're going to use, and we're going to exploit this to break the security of XCB AES. Before I describe the attack, let's have a look at the timeline. So XCB AES, as I mentioned, was standardized in 2010. And later in 2013, there was a padding attack found on XCB AES, which showed that XCB AES with padded message is not secure. So in 2021, IEEE revised the standard and kept XCB AES as part of the standard, but said that it should not be used with padded messages. So basically, only for messages of full block length. So till date, it was considered provably secure with security proofs, multiple security proofs, showing that it is VLSTPRP secure with security up to birthday bound. So for AES 128, you had security roughly around 2 to the 52 queries. But in this work, we saw that actually XCB AES is insecure even after 2 queries. We not only break the VLSTPRP or STPRP security, but also the very basic and weakest security, SPRP security. Basically, it's not even a strong pseudo-random permutation. And then attack is not the distinguishing attack, but also a message recovery attack. You can recover almost the entire plain text. Finally, the attack is not specific to XCB AES. It applies to all other XCB variants, like other TEMs that has the same design strategy as XCB AES. So let's now have a look at the attack, which is the most important part here. The attack, to simplify the attack description, I will simplify the block diagram for you. So let's have a look at the block diagram. Here, one thing I want to point out is that the attack, we call it the shared difference attack, is invariant of the internals of the counter mode. So any function that is a keystream generator can be used here for the attack. So we replace it by a keystream generator G. And for the polynomial hashes here, H, they are the same hash functions, but they take different inputs in different order. So we can write them like this, and internally they use a polynomial hash. So the description is like this, where the inputs are first padded and then concatenated, and then as I defined before, a polynomial is evaluated on this input. For now, we will call them H1 and H2 because of smaller differences, and that simplifies the diagram to this. Two more things about polynomial hash before I describe the attack. That for polynomial hash, we have a property, very common property is called linearity of polynomial hash. They are linear, or what we call in this paper separable. And here's an example of what it means to be separable. So let's say you have a polynomial hash evaluated on A1, A2, A3, A4, and you inject, or let's say XOR a variable delta here, then you can, while opening it in polynomial, you can separate out this delta dependent term, and you can write it as another polynomial hash evaluation. So basically, polynomial hash can be separated into two polynomials where the second term is just delta dependent. It's independent of the input A1 to A4. So if we apply this explanation to H1 and H2, we get for H1, if you apply delta here, you can separate it and you get a polynomial only depending on delta. Let's call it F delta. Then you can also do the same for H2. And you get this polynomial here, which if you look closely is exactly same. It has differently put these zeros, but the number of zeros before delta and after delta are same. So basically, they're the same polynomial. So you get H2 plus F delta again. Two key things to notice here is first, H1 and H2 are separable, and second, that after separation they get the same F delta separated. These are the two things we're going to exploit in the attack. We are now ready to describe the attack. So let's have a look at the attack. We have an adversary who is given a target ciphertext C, and the goal for the adversary is to recover plain text for it. The ciphertext is generated from XCB AES. The adversary wants to target SPRP security, so basically it will use the same tweak, and it chooses a non-zero delta. And it decides to make two queries. The first query is a deciphering query with the deciphering oracle, and for this, it puts a delta in the left part of the ciphertext and asks the oracle to decipher it. Now, notice here that this CL and this CL plus delta has just a delta difference. So when you process it through the H2 function here, you will have F delta difference here because of the relation that I showed. This F delta will now propagate upwards into these two branches, and you will have F delta XORed here and here compared to previous target ciphertext query. Now, the adversary gets ML prime and MR prime as a response to this query. So it decides to make a enciphering query this time. Yeah, with this time injecting delta to the left part of the input. So now if you compare this left part with this left part, the query 1 and query 2, you see a delta difference here. So after H1 query, the delta difference will propagate to the output. And now pushing it to the two branches here, you will have the same F delta propagated in these two branches. So at this point, this F delta and this F delta will cancel out. This F delta and this F delta will cancel out, and you will have this. So if you compare this query 2 and with the target ciphertext query, all these internal variables are different except Z. Z has a collision now. And Z is the only input, which is basically the IV input to the counter mode, or in this case, any keystream generator. So you have a collision in the output. Basically, the whole keystreams collide. And now you have ML plus CL equal to ML prime plus delta plus CL prime. If you take CL this side, you have plain text. You have just recovered almost the entire plain text, because ML prime, CL prime, delta, and CL are known to the adversary. So it's a really simple two query, a really powerful attack. But the next question comes, why did this work? If you had provable security and if you had linear structure, what went wrong here? So the root cause is this shared difference property of the sum of two polynomial hash functions. To understand this, let's define a sum of polynomial hash functions. So let's say H sum that takes all the different inputs of these two hash functions, and we define it as the sum of two. Then H sum has this property that if you inject deltas in both M and C, you can separate the delta out and you will have this thing cancelled out. So basically, H sum was supposed to be collision free, or let's say hard to find collisions, but it is not actually. It is really easy to find collisions for H, a property that is undesirable for the security, and something that was assumed to be not true in the security proofs. This concludes the attack. Now I'll talk about the flaw in the proof. I'll not go into details of each proof. There are multiple proofs of XCB AES and also other XCB variants that they all fall under the same, let's say, they all have the same flaw, which is they all follow this roughly this kind of progression, where they assume that H1 and H2 are XOR universal Hess function. Then this should imply that H sum is also universal, which means it's hard to find collisions for H sum, and therefore you have unpredictable and, let's say, hard to collide IVs, and therefore unpredictable key streams and security for the TEM. But actually, we just saw that H sum is really easy to find collision for H sum. So H sum is not really universal. So this is where the proofs are flawed, that H1 and H2 being XOR universal does not imply that their sum is also universal. And that H1 and H2 could have some relation that can be exploited in the sum. So this is where the flaws, this is where the proofs are flawed. And now I'll also talk about the applications of the attack on other XCB schemes. So XCB AES, just like XCB AES, there are other variants of hash counter has similar strategy. And there are 3 of these, HCI and MXCB, which is, if you see, they're just a flipped version on the y-axis of XCB AES. This time you just separate the first block on the left side, and then the remaining is taken as MR. So you apply the attack directly, and this time you recover MR instead of ML. There's another variant of XCB called XCB-V1, which is XCB AES, but with 2 independent hash keys. With 2 independent hash keys. So the attack does not directly apply, but you can easily see it's really intuitive to apply this XCB-V1 forward and then the inward call of this to notice that the top and the bottom layers are now the same hash function. And if you circle around the middle part as another key stream generating function, then you have roughly a structure same as XCB AES. And as I mentioned at the start, that the attack is invariant of what this key stream generating function is. So you can apply the attacks directly there. I've kept the details for this in the backup slides for the sake of time, but if you're interested, I can also, because this is also an interesting way to apply the attack to XCB-V1, which means that having independent hash keys is also not a good idea for XCB design strategy. Summarizing the attacks in this table. In 2023, in an ePrint, Kerala already showed that LRW1, which was a known result, but formally described by Kerala, that LRW1 is not secure for n-bit messages as an STPRP, and that applies on all XCB variants. This work shows that XCB variants are also not secure for any messages larger than n bits. So for n bits, you had an attack. For larger than n bits, you have an attack. This implies that XCB is insecure for all message lengths. In this work, we also showed another attack called flip part attacks, which does not exploit the separable property. So which means this attack is still applicable if you use inseparable hash function. Like if you replace the polynomial hash with something else, like a cryptographic hash function, you will still have this attack. So in this paper, we also proposed some countermeasures. So as we just saw, XCB style on its own is insecure because you have this shared difference that can be exploited because you sum the hash functions here. So an obvious and, let's say, natural countermeasure would be to avoid the sum by putting a block cipher in between. This is the strategy well known, used in HCTR2, and it provides you ×1 security with quite nice performance if you use AES-128. In an extended version of this paper, we also propose another strategy called JAM, which instead of avoiding the sums, it uses inseparable hash functions, basically uses polynomial hash and then followed by a finalization call like a block cipher to mask the output to make it unusable for the shared difference attack. And this allows you to use, let's say, a weaker primitive here and also more flexible for the input size, and therefore allows you to achieve twice the security, basically beyond but the security up to full 128 bits at the cost of some performance. And if you use a dedicated primitive like butter knife, which is also based on AES internals, you can even recover back the performance, giving you the double security for free. So to conclude, in this work, we proposed an attack on all XCB variants, breaking them for all different security notions, and also pinpointed the exact flaw in the existing analysis. We also presented some countermeasures like the JAM design strategy. And as an impact of this work, IEEE has officially removed XCB AES from the standard. Now, I would like to give 2 takeaways from this work. First one is that this work presents a cryptographic vulnerability in an existing TEM standard. This highlights the pressing needs of efforts to be put in new TM designs and analysis techniques, something that is already targeted by, also targeted by NIST Accordion Initiative, is essential. And second, which is the most important one, is that cryptographic vulnerabilities are no more important than ethical vulnerabilities, and that we as a community must enforce direct and decisive measures to deter misconducts among or during peer review process. Thank you.
Questions?
You referred twice to problems in the reviewing process. Can you elaborate, or do you prefer to skip over it?
I would like to elaborate, but yeah, there was, so the paper was submitted to Crypto 2024, and then a misconduct happened during the review process. And then for later submissions to AsiaCrypt, Eurocrypt, I would just say that there was a reviewer who did some misconduct. I can give more details. Maybe, I don't know if it is appropriate to say it here, but I don't know. I will not take any names, but yeah. A reviewer who,
Let's take it back.
Yeah.
I guess I'll ask a question. Do you still think the overall constructions with the countermeasures is interesting, or should we move on to other methods?
I think they're pretty interesting because the XCB design strategy is really, I would say, one of the most performance strategies. It has really good performance benefits, which is also one of the reasons that SCTR2 got a lot of attention. It's wait, oh, sorry, it's the backup slide. So here, this is SCTR2 that got a lot of attention. It is also Google's standard, I would say, used in many applications. And the reason that it is really useful is the hash counter hash strategy. It's one of, there are multiple ways to design TEMs, and this is the one that has most prominent both security and performance results. It's just that XCB-AES being like 20 years old result and being a standard for last 15 years, this thing was undetected, but it's a problem between using I would say a weak but really cheap in cost hash functions like AXU hash functions. But these countermeasures can give you back the security and keep the same performance. So I think this is a really good strategy to have this. There are many TMs that are also based on this SCTR2 style. So not our attack does not apply to that, but the reason that they are all using the same strategy is because they want to keep the performance.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So Peng Wang will be presenting this from remotely, and this is how to recover the full plaintext of XCB.
Hello everyone, my name is Peng Wang from UCAS, University of Chinese Academy of Sciences. I'm very glad to present our paper titled How to Recover the Full Plaintext of XCB. Unfortunately, due to visa issues, I cannot attend the meeting in person, but I'm very happy to share our work with you here. Let me start with the outline. First, a brief introduction to TM and XCB. So what is a tweakable in several mode, or TM? TM is a land-preserving self-encryption scheme whose goal is to achieve security of STPRP. It is particularly well suited for applications like full disk encryption. By using the data union index, such as the sector number, as the tweak, TM ensures independent pseudo-random permutation for enciphering each union. So it is a very strong encryption if we satisfy the security of XTPRT. Next, let's look at XCB. XCB is the TM standardized in IEEE 16 and 19.2. It was first proposed by McGrew et al. In the year of 2004 without a formal security proof. We refer to this version as XCB v1. In the year of 2007, they introduced a revised version, XCB v2, this time with a security proof. The XCB in standard is XCB v2. Both XCB v1 and XCB v2 follow a hash CTR hash structure showed in this map, while H1 and H2 are two universal hash functions, and C is a string cipher in CTR mode. Now, a very important property we use in our attacks. Both H1 and H2, based on polynomial inversion function, are separable. What does it mean? It means that any string XORed with the input of H can be factored out from the function by G1 or G2. This separability property is the only feature we rely on in our attack. Move on to related work. In the year of 2013, Chakraborty et al. Showed that XCB v2 is insecure when the message length is not a multiple block size. They did this by presenting a distinguisher attack. They also provided security proofs for XCB v1 and for the multiple block length version of XCB v2, known as XCB v2FB. More recently, Barty et al. Proposed an attack against XCB v2FB that can recover the plain text except for one block. So it is a partial plain text recovery attack. They used just two queries. Inspired by the work of Barty et al., we began to wonder whether it might be possible to recover the entire plain text. As a warm-up, we extend Barty et al.'s attack into a full plain text recovery attack with one more query, just one more query. After that, we proposed 3 more plain text recovery attacks that apply to all versions of XCB. Here is a summary of the covered situation. Our work gives the first full plain text recovery attack. Our 3 new attacks are quite general. They only need knowledge of XCB structure and the separable property of the hash function without inquiring further details about the structure. So attack is works in the level of structure. Now let's walk through the details of our attacks. We begin with the warm-up, a full plaintext recovery attack. The first two steps are exactly the same as multi-address attack with one extra query. So we make totally 3 queries. We can attend it to a complete plaintext recovery attack. Unfortunately, this method only works on XCB v2, but not on XCB v1. So this method cannot directly apply to XCB v1. So the question is, for XCB, whether it is XCB v1 or XCB v2, give you G and E, the ciphertext. How can we recover A and B? This is the question. The first 2 steps are identical to Barty's approach. This is the first query, decryption query. In the second query, we observe that S2 maps back to S. So from this, they can recover B. Use the 2 query to recover B. In the third query, U3 maps back to U. So this allows us to recover A. This is the first full plaintext recovery attack against XCB, but it cannot apply to XCB v1. Next, let's move on to our 3 main attacks. They all follow the main similar pattern, alternating between decryption and encryption query. Each time use different tweak. The first query with the tweak T XOR data. Next is T, and the third one is T XOR data. This is the attack 2. We can recover B with arbitrary length messaging. This is attack 3. They follow the same similar pattern with only difference of the query, the time of query. These 3 attacks are applicable to all versions of XCB. A key observation is this: when XCB processes a single block message, they behave just like LWR1, a tweak block cipher constructed from block cipher, known to lack CCA security. So, attack 1. For single block messages, the XCB becomes LRW1. For this LRW1, we can adopt the previous attack, the distinguisher attack, for example, described by previous paper, into a full plaintext recovery attack. Attack 1 applies to any schemes follow the XCB structure, including all versions of XCB. So for this single message, they are not secured due to insecurity of LRW1. Very interestingly, although many papers note that LRW1 lacks CCA security, no concrete attack were ever published. Perhaps it was considered too simple to mention. This is attack 1. Next, let's look at attack 2 and 3, which apply to arbitrary length messaging, not only single block messaging. So given the twig T and the ciphertext GE, the question is how to recover A and B, the plaintext, the entire plaintext. This is the first query, decryption query. Then comes the second one and the third one. With the fourth query, we observe that S4 maps back to S, and we can recover B. That is attack 2. If we stop here, it is only partial plaintext recovery attack. In fact, in our earlier draft, we ended at this point, but we were not satisfied. One night, we have an idea. Why not make a few more queries? How many queries? It turns out 3 more queries are enough to recover A. Amazingly, it works. We confirmed the method both theoretically and by running XCB's code. That is when we added the word "full" into the title of our paper. The fifth query. The sixth query, encryption. And in the seventh query, the magic happens. We observe that U7 maps back to U. So A is recovered. So what does it mean? It means that all versions of XCB have security issues. We proposed the 3 attack to show that XCB has very serious security problems. So naturally, the next question is, how can we fix that? Our suggestion is to modify the structure by adding just 2 extra red lines in the diagram. We call the new scheme XCB star. So it is a very small modification to the original structure by just 2 red lines. If we view the universal function together with his left block cipher, the structure becomes exactly the LRW2 construction. As a result, if we view the H and E or H and D as a whole, it is a tweakable block cipher. As a result, the overall mode transferred into the PIV construction proposed by Schimper et al. We also provide a security proof for XCB star. Let me now conclude. So, all versions of XCB are insecure. All tags apply even to the standardized version, XCB v2. Our full plaintext recovery tag on XCB v2FB requires only 3 queries. Attack 1 highlights the structural weakness of XCB. In this attack, XCB becomes LRW1. And the attack 2 and 3 explores the separable property of underlying universal hash function. Therefore, we strongly recommend reconsidering the user exhibit, and his underlying structure. Here are the references. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us.
All right. Great. Next will be guess and determine rebound. Applications to key collisions on AES. And it'll be presented by Ling Yue Quinn.
Today I will talk about a work, Guess and Determine Rebound, Applications to Key Collisions on AES. This is a joint work with Wen Quanbi and Xiaoyang Dong. This talk includes the following three parts. First, background and preliminaries. Recently, the key commitment of authenticated encryption with associated data has attracted considerable attention. The key committing security ensures that a ciphertext chosen by an attacker does not decrypt into two different sets of key, mask, and associated data. In Usenix 2022, Albertini et al. Revealed that the widely used AE schemes, AES-GCM and Cha-Cha-20 Poly 1305, may suffer from the key committing attack. They introduced a padding fixed scheme, prepending L0s denoted as X to the message M for each encryption and checking them after decryption. The security of the padding should be evaluated for each scheme, and they proposed an open problem. Is it possible to find two keys, key 1 and key 2, such that 0 can be encrypted to the same ciphertext and key 1 and key 2 with AES in less than 2 to the 64 trails? At Asia Crypt 2024, Hayama et al. First answered this open question by introducing the key collision attack on AES with rebound attack. They introduced the target plaintext key collision as it is two distinct keys that generate the same ciphertext for a single target plaintext. The collision can be classified into two different problems depending on whether the single target plaintext is predetermined or not. We focus on the fixed target key collision attacks, which encrypt 0 with AES and different K1 and K2 to same ciphertext. Since this case has a practical impact on the key committing security of the widely used AES-GCM. AES is a 128-bit block cipher with a 128, 192, 256-bit key. It operates on a 4x4 column major order array of bytes. The round function contains 4 major transformations: subbytes, shift rows, mix columns, and add round key. Rebound attack is introduced by Mendel et al. It splits the internal block cipher F into 3 subparts, named as inbound and outbound phase. In the inbound phase, the attackers efficiently fulfill the low probability part in the middle of the differential with a meet-in-the-middle technique to get matched pairs. The remainder of the characteristic is the outbound phase, which is fulfilled in a probabilistic manner. At Crypto 2022, Dong et al. Introduced the triangulating rebound attack. They connect multiple inbound phases with the available degrees of freedom, both from the key schedule and the encryption path. and efficiently solve a nonlinear system of the byte equations of AES with the help of a triangulation algorithm to fulfill the differential. We give an example of the triangulation algorithm. Assume we have 7 byte variables in the following byte equations. After triangulation, 2 variables x and s can be assigned randomly and deduce the other variables. However, the triangulation algorithm may fail to find good ways to solve the system. All variables appear in all or most equations simultaneously. However, the system can be simplified by the Gaussian elimination and solved by easily exhausting. In fact, at Crypto 2011, Boygat et al. Have already proposed an efficient guess and determine method to solve the nonlinear system of AES, which adopted the Gaussian elimination method to process the system. Moreover, only single-key differentials of AES are explored in Dong et al.'s triangulating rebound attack, but the key collision attack should explore related key differentials. While related key differential characteristic has already fixed some key values, so the keys may lead to contradictions with the value deduced from the encryption data path. We find that the related key differentials on 2-round AES 128 and 6-round AES 256 used by Tayama et al. Are invalid when searching for K collisions with plaintext P equal to 0. To improve Dong et al.'s triangulating rebound attack and Tayama et al.'s K collision attack, we propose the guess and determine rebound attack. The GD rebound involves 2 steps. The first step is to determine related key differentials with restrictions on the degree of freedom and avoid contradictions. The second step is to determine an efficient rebound phase with guess and determine. In step 1, the related key differential should satisfy the following conditions. To get collision, there should be no active bytes in plaintext P and ciphertext C. Considering the degree of freedom of the attack, the fixed target key collision can utilize the DOF of the key, while the free target key collision can utilize the DOF of both the key and plaintext. So the probability of the differential is bounded in different settings. For K collision, the differences are all introduced by the key. The value deduced from the active S-box in the encryption path may conflict with the value deduced from the active S-box in the key schedule in the position of fixed P. Taking Tayama et al.'s fixed target key collision attack of 2-round AES 128 as an example, the differences of x0 by 12 and k0 by 12 are same, but the differences of them after the S-box are different. To fulfill the differential, we can deduce the values of x012 and k012, which none of them leads to p12 b0. We give 2 ways to solve this incompatibility. The first way is to avoid activating S-box in round 0 of the key schedule. For AES 128, the last column of K0 is set to non-active. The second way is to set the output differences in the corresponding active box in KS and EN paths to be the same. In this case, the degree of freedom and probability of the differential should be reconsidered. When x0j has non-zero difference, once the value of x0j satisfies the active S-box in the SB operation in the encryption, this value will instantly satisfy the corresponding active S-box in the key schedule with probability 1. This is the key factor that, we can give a 3-round practical K-collision attack on AES-128, which is believed impossible in previous work. Given a related key differential in step 1, the key point of step 2 is to determine the inbound phase. We first select the starting round as the initial inbound. For example, the starting round 3 in the finger. Since the difference of the active S-box are fixed, we then fix all the values of the active S-box in Ks and En by accessing DDT in the initial inbound. Feed the AES round system of inbound and known bytes to Boyle-Gatt et al.'s tool. We get the guess and determine GD process of inbound, which determines the whole states of the inbound step by step. However, in our cryptanalysis on AES, there exist conflicts during the GD process, which determines the complexity of the GD for finding starting points. We find the conflicts could be divided into 3 types. Type 1 conflicts is that active X-boxes falsely include in the inbound. For example, when the known bytes X2, byte 2 and 6 in the boundary of the inbound are deduced again from guess and determine step, they will lead to conflicts. We can move this type of conflicts to the outbound phase to save time complexity. Type 2 conflict is between the computation of Ks and En paths. For example, K22 is deduced through Ks with fixed P, and also deduced from the round function. The conflict can be solved in the brute force fashion with time complexity 2 to 8. However, with a pre-computation on the non-read byte, the 2 to 8 complexity can be saved. Fix the known bytes in the GD process. The value of K22 is deduced without conflict, so this type of conflict doesn't affect the overall complexity. The type 3 internal conflict can be removed to the outbound or resolved by pre-computation. This type of conflicts can only be solved in a brute force fashion. Let the numbers of type 1, 2, 3 conflicts be C1, C2, C3. Then, after addressing the conflicts in different ways, the time complexity of the GD to find one starting point decreases to 2 to the 8 C3. At the same time, the probability of the outbound phase should add the probability of type 1 conflicts. Then, the overall time complexity is decided by the probability of outbound phase and the time complexity of the GD. For better attack, we can add more rounds of the Ks or En path into the inbound and update the probability of the outbound phase. Run guess and determine tool to find a new GD and analyze the conflicts. Initially, with the short inbound phase, the probability of the outbound phase is usually very low, leading to the time complexity exceeding the birthday paradox. As the range of the inbound phase increases, the probability of the outbound will increase, but the number of conflicts could also increase. Our algorithm can find a balance between the time to solve the conflicts and the time for the outbound phase, leading to a better overall time complexity. We apply the new GD rebound attack to K-collision attacks on round-reduced AES. We detail the attack on 3-round AES-128. We give a new related key differential. If we use the same way with Tayama et al. To calculate its probability, it will be 2 to the minus 131, which is infeasible for a key collision attack. However, as the probability of the two active X-boxes for X012 and K012 only needs to be calculating once, the real probability is 2 to the minus 125, which is sufficient for a K-collision attack. We chose the first two rounds of the EN and KS as the inbound phase. The remaining parts are the outbound phase. The steps of the GD for the inbound phase are marked by a number in the finger. The first step is deducing the values of states before and after the active explosives by accessing the DDT, which is marked by 1 with green border. Then compute backward with fixed P to get some K0, and compute forward to partial Z0 and Z1. In step 2, get the values of K0, 5, and 12. Deduce the other 4 Ks according to the K relations. Then for column 0 of the OMC operation of round 0, for values in the inputs and outputs are known, and we can deduce the other 4 values. The detailed equations of the guess and determine process are listed in the table. The blue bytes are guessed. In step 1, we deduce the values for active bytes from the input-output difference in the inbound phase. There are 2 to 13 combinations for the 13 active bytes. In step 2 and 4, 3 byte keys are guessed for each combination. Therefore, there expect 2 to 37 states satisfying the inbound trail in total, which act as the starting points for the outbound phase. Since there is no conflict in the inbound phase, the time of the GD to find one starting point is 1. Since the probability of the outbound phase is 2 to the minus 35, we need to collect 2 to the 35 starting point to expect one collision. The overall time complexity is 2 to the 35, and the memory complexity is negligible. We find K collisions in several hours on personal computer. Some collisions are given for verification. Summary: we introduced the guess and determine rebound attack. The first improvement is to explore and identify valid related key differentials to shoot for K collision attack. The second improvement is to determine the range of inbound phase with the guess and determine technique, and handle the conflicts by different ways. For applications, we apply our method to the K collisions on AES, and improve the time complexity of all the theoretical K collision attacks on AES proposed by Tayama et al. Into practical ones. Additionally, a 3-round practical K collision attack on AES 128 is given, which is assumed to be impossible before. Besides, some quantum K collisions attack and semi-freestyle K collision attacks are proposed. The results of our attacks are summarized in the table. That's all of my talk. Thanks for your attention.
Hi everyone, I'm going to present our work.
Great. So the last talk of the session will be new collisions attacks on reduced round SHA 2 or 512, excuse me. Yingxin Li will be presenting.
The work title is the new collision attacks on round radius SHA-512. My name is Yingxin Li. This talk is divided in 3 parts. In the first part, I will briefly review SHA. The SHA-2 family is a series of hash functions standardized by NIST. SHA-2 hash function is to strengthen security of SHA-1. SHA-2 had more complex compression function. SHA-2 mainly consists of 2 versions, named SHA-256 and SHA-512. SHA-2 has been used worldwide. SHA-256 and SHA-512 almost are the same message expansion and step function. only with different state size and different rotation number in sigma. So our research objective is SHA-512. Next, we will introduce the SHA-512 hash function. The compression function of SHA-512 consists of two parts: step function and the message expansion. The step function, the EI, is updated by A-4, E-1, E-2, E-3, Ki, and Wi. The AI is updated by EI, M-4, M-3, M-2, M-1. The Ki is a constant, the Wi is a message expansion. 1, sigma 0, sigma 1, if MAG, the blend function sigma 0, sigma 1, if MAG are given by these four equations. The message expansion of SHA-512 splits the 1024-bit message block MJ into 16 words MI is 0 to 15. The expands them into 80 expanded message word WI. The VI is 0 to 15, the WI is 2 MI. VI is 16 to 79, the WI is updated by this equation. The sigma 0 and sigma 1 blend function, and the blend function showing these two equations. In recent years, a series of clean attack studies against SHA-2 has been conducted, especially by selecting message word W7, W7, W8, W12, W15, W17. Researchers have achieved a practical 29 step clean attacks on both SHA-256 and SHA-512 by selecting message word W9, W13, W16, W18. They have achieved, the researchers have achieved a practical 28 step clean attack on SHA-256 and SHA-512, and by selecting the message word W5, W6, W7, W8, W9, W16, W18. They have achieved a practical 31 steps clean attacks on SHA-256 as well as a theoretical 31 steps clean attacks on SHA-512. In the 31 step clean attacks framework, two message block are used. The output of the first message block M0 is put as an input to the second message block, and the first message block can be freely chosen. The clean attack is mainly divided into 3 steps. The first step is the pre-processing phases, and the second steps matching phases, and the last steps fulfill and control conditions. The complex of the clean attacks framework mainly consists of 2 parts. In the first part, come from the first steps, and its time complex can be defined as TPRE, where TPRE is equal to the following equation, and the time complex of the second and third steps can be defined as TMT, where TMT is equal to the following equation. From equation for TMT, it can be seen that the number of starting points has an impact on the time complex of the step 2 and step 3. From 31 steps SHA-512 clean attacks in Asia Crypto 2024, it can be observed that only 4 starting points were found. Analysis the 31 steps differential trial reverses that. In the A state, although A8 appears sparse due to the MAG blend function, many 2-bit conditions exist on A8, result in only a single solution, and thus limiting the number of staying points to. Therefore, we consider that if we can reduce the number of two-bit condition and obtain the more starting point, we can reduce the time complex. The 31 steps SHA-512 clean attacks. Next, we will reintroduce how to captain the number of two-bit condition. The SHA-512 mainly have three Boolean functions: XOR, if, and MAJ are given by these three equations. So we will use the XOR Boolean function as an example, in which previous researchers proposed two Boolean function models, the fast model and the full model. In the full model, volume were introduced to avoid contradiction conditions. When a proper propagation ruler is given, it applies to both the fast model and the full model, but both models contain the same conditions and neither contain the two-bit conditions. And to captain the two-bit conditions, we slightly modify the propagation rulers of Boolean function in the full model. And in the first model, only sign difference propagation rulers were considered, while in the full model, corresponding value added to avoid the contradictions. And in the modified full model, we add a flag at the end. If the propagation ruler implicitly contains two-bit conditions, the flag is set to 1, the flag is set to 0. And we can give the full model for the Boolean function XOR, if, and MAJ. And next, we have provided the new propagation rulers for all three Boolean functions. And according to the new Boolean function propagation ruler, we provided a detailed step-by-step description of finding improved 31 differential characteristic suitable for the clean attacks framework. The processing is as follows. This have 5 steps, and we can find a new differential trail. By using the new differential, we can find more starting points and reduce the time complexity of the 31 steps SHA-512 clean attack. Since the 31 steps SHA-512 clean attack is theoretical, we consider whether it is possible to further increase the number of steps in a practical SHA-512 clean the attack by selecting new message word to injecting difference. If we want finding a valid attack, require attacks to finish the following 3 tasks and task 3, 1, task 2, and task 3. So the first the task 1, we need to detailed analysis of the message word in SHA-512. According to the SHA-2 message expansion, we found that there are 2 ways of selecting message words that can from a local cleansing, leading a 29 steps and 13 steps clean attack. However, the time complex of modifying the message for a 30 steps clean attack too high, and not to find a practical clean attacks cleaning message pair. So we perform a attack on 29 SHA-512. Based on the above analysis, injecting the difference in the expanded message word W9, W10, W14, W17, and M19 can create a local key that spans 11 steps in the message expansion, which allow clean the attack on 29 steps SHA-512. Based on the non-zero message expansion message word, we can find the 29 steps differential trial. They have 5 steps, so we can find a valid 29 steps differential trial. Based on the 29 steps, we can give the message modification, and they have 3 steps. In the first steps, we can find a valid solution in the expanded message word W9 to W14, as well as the state words A1 to A14 and E5 to E14 by step update function. We call such a valid solution as starting point. And the last step, and the 2 steps after determine the message word, the state words in the step 1. And the remaining the message word W0 to W8. W15 have not been fixed, and our goal is to use the W0 to W8 to connect the state words with the initial value IV. And the last steps we can use. Last steps W0, W50, but W0, W14 have already been fixed, and only W15 remaining unfixed. We can use the degree of freedom of W15 to satisfy the uncontrolled conditions. In the step 3, we need to satisfy the 88 conditions in 88 uncontrolled conditions. So we propose a novel method to use the degree to study the degree of freedom of W15 to fulfill the remaining conditions. Up to this, the W0, W14 have already been fixed, and there are many conditions in W17 in total, and we can obtain all 2 to the power of 8 possible of value for W17. We can which are stored in a table, and we first verify the W19, and then we verify the condition on W. We verify the bit condition on W on the E15, 16, and 17 can be verified based on the update function. So you use in this method, we can easily to obtain the uncontrolled conditions. And this is the clean attacks. This is a complex evolution of the modification message. The probability of one step to being satisfied is 1. And in the step 3, we need to satisfy. Step 3, we first determine all possible values of W17, and we can get all possible value. There are once W17 is satisfied, there are 32 remaining conditions. So the time complex of 29 steps SHA-512 clean attacks is 2 to the power of 32. We can quickly obtain the practical cleaning message pair. And this method, we can also apply similar message selection method and message modification techniques to SHA-256, and we can also obtain the practical cleaning message pair for 29 steps of SHA-256. And this is a summary of as shown in this table. We have obtained the currently best clean attack results for SHA-512. That's all. Thank you.